Hi, I'm Tom Barnett, and this is Da Vinci. He is my studio pet. He's a loving little black kitty boy. So I wanted to welcome you to this very first edition of Small Talk in the Tall Pines. We are going to be bringing in people that are of interest in the community, people that are business owners, movers and shakers, or just plain interesting people. What the object of this show I wanted to convey is what these people do, what they bring to the community that makes it interesting and fun to live here. So I thought for the very first guest, I would have probably the most interesting man in the North Woods, Kerry Bloedorn, as my first guest. I'm really excited to bring him on and talk to him about all the things that he does in our community, all the things he knows about our community. He's a local historian, as well as about, 100 other hats that he wears in the community. So I thought that he would be my first guest, and he would be a really interesting person to talk to. So as soon as we come back from this very first initial commercial, we'll get on with the show. In a concrete jungle, the call of the wild is deafening. And I just picked up the phone. The concrete is overtaken by the wild. Silk becomes plaid as the scent of pine fills my nostrils. As the wild and I collide, I'm free. The manly scent of the Northwoods aromas fills my pores. Was it a dream? Was it the mushrooms? Hodag à toi, for the beast in you. May cause rectal bleeding, dry mouth, loss of hearing, color blindness, irritability, loss of hair and nails, the need to eat white bulldogs, fear of lumberjacks, speaking gibberish, green skin discoloration, red eyes, spinal protrusions, panting, rapid tooth growth, cranial growth. The Totally Safe Cologne Institute is not liable for damages caused by this product. Hodag à toi, the cologne you can purchase in most back alleys. Welcome back. The first section of this show is going to be our movie review section. I love movies, and I love watching movies, and I love talking about movies, so I wanted this section to be in the show because, I like sharing my opinion of movies too. So, the first movie that I'm actually going to be talking about was heartbreaking to me. It's Halloween Ends. I am a huge fan of the Halloween franchise. Michael Myers is my jam. I love it. I love the movies. I love the very first one. There have been some garbage movies along the way. I'm not a big fan of Season of the Witch. I'm not a big fan of the Rob Zombie Halloween movies. But we're not talking about those movies. We're talking about Halloween Ends. So, spoiler alert, if you have not seen Halloween Ends, one, you probably shouldn't go see it, but two, I'm going to be talking about some of the stuff that happens in the movie. So you have 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Halloween Ends is garbage, in my opinion. So the reason I say this, and I know that's a strong statement, the reason I say this is because there are so many things wrong with this movie, it's unspeakable. And for a Halloween fan like myself, it was completely heartbreaking. Other people love it. I understand that. Maybe it's a generational thing. I don't know what it is. But some people love it, and some people like me just absolutely can't stand it. So in Halloween Kills, we are left with Michael killing Laurie's daughter. And she gets a phone call, and it answers, and it's Michael breathing. And she says, "I'm coming for you, Michael." And the movie ends with her walking out of the hospital holding a bloody knife with a very stern look on her face. Now, where Halloween Ends picks up, she's living a happy life in a booby trap free house with her granddaughter and trying to move on with her life. Those two movies do not match up at all of what's supposed to be going on. So that bugged me right off the bat. So in Halloween Kills, or the original Halloween of this new trilogy, Michael was locked up for 40 years. Yet Laurie was paranoid about him. She booby-trapped her home. She did everything she possibly could to be ready for his inevitable return. In the next movie, Halloween Kills, again, she is very distraught. She is in the hospital, but she knows that Michael's out there, very scared. So in Halloween Ends, he's been missing for 4 years, but he's still out there. So why now is she completely happy just living her life trying to move on when she knows he's out there? He's not in a hospital. He's not trapped somewhere. He's still out there lurking in the shadows somewhere. So it makes no sense for her to be just moving on with her life and writing a book about their battle. That's my first big beef about it. Second big beef is the introduction of a new character that took up the majority of the film to introduce him. Why would you introduce a brand new character that we haven't heard about in any of the other movies, not even a name drop, in a final movie of a trilogy where it makes no difference whether this kid is around or not? I saw what they were trying to do. A lot of people are like, oh, you just don't understand what, I do understand. Evil takes a different shape. And they were trying to bring this Corey kid into the Halloween franchise by making him the different shape of evil. Problem with that is people are going to see this movie for Michael, not Corey. People want to see Michael, and at best, Michael made a cameo appearance at the very end. Yeah, he was sprinkled in throughout after about an hour of the movie, but the big major part of Michael was pretty much a 5-minute letdown fight at the very end of the movie. They're trying to say that, oh, he's a 60-year-old man and he's decrepit now. That's not true. Michael Myers is supposed to be pure evil. He has been shot, he's been stabbed, he's been burned, he's had things cut off of him, for God's sakes. A kid that's much smaller than him is not going to push him down and steal his mask from him. I'm sorry, it doesn't make sense. So my opinion on Halloween Ends is that it was a major letdown, filled with a character no one really cared about because we didn't have time to care about him, because he was kind of thrown at us in this final film of a trilogy. I think that Jamie Lee Curtis is promoting the film as a great film because that's what she's getting paid to do. Honestly, in her heart, I know she knows it's not a good film. I feel bad for Michael Myers. I feel bad for Laurie Strode. I feel bad for these characters that existed all this time to have this as their final chapter in their long story. So 1 star out of 5, and that's being generous. I am not a fan of this movie. Go see it if you will. I would love to know your opinions. Drop me an email or a chat in the channel down below here. But yeah, it's not good. I'm telling you, it's a big letdown in my eyes, and I will forever be a huge fan of the original. And long live Michael Myers. So welcome back. As you can see here, I have Kerry Bloedorn. He is probably one of the most interesting men in the Northwoods in my book. He is the Pioneer Park Historical Complex Coordinator. He's got a history segment on WJFW. He's a local historian and about a dozen other hats that he wears. He's also the Vice President of the United County Fair, if you hadn't known that either. But most of all, I call him my friend. So Kerry, Da Vinci has some questions for you, obviously. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being my very first guest on Small Talk in the Tall Pines.
Yeah, honored. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, mostly what makes you so interested in the history of this area?
Oh, the way you talked about me just now, I feel like I should probably start like going barefoot. Like all the most interesting people in Northwoods history always went barefoot. Like there was this guy named Barefoot Charlie up in the Land O'Lakes area. There was a guide, a fishing guide from Boulder Junction. His nickname Barefoot. Of course, he went barefoot everywhere. So maybe I should follow suit.
Yeah, maybe we should start calling you Barefoot Kerry.
Yeah, it's tougher to go barefoot these days than it was 50, 100 years ago.
Sure.
But what makes me interested in Northwoods history? It's interesting, and it just appeals to me. And the deeper you dive into the rich heritage and culture and history here in the Northwoods of Wisconsin, the more that I want to learn about it. And someone once told me, a wise man once told me, that information is not knowledge until it is shared. So one thing I really enjoy to do is talk to people about history and share what I learn with people.
I like that saying. That's a very interesting saying. So what would you say is the most interesting story you've heard about the Northwoods here? And I know that's a hard one for you, but
it is a really hard one because there's so many interesting stories. And like you mentioned, I am the director at the Pioneer Park Historical Complex Museum here in Rhinelander. I also do a monthly history program on WXBR, a Northwoods Moment in History. I write history articles for the New North magazine, which you're involved in. And I also, as of recently, this last 4 or 5 months, have a history segment on WJFW Channel 12. So I'm always like digging up new history stories and going back into things that I've researched in the past to write about and to learn more about. And it's really, really difficult to just pinpoint one specific thing. There's like so many things. So if you want to pick one out, just go on WJFW's website or WXBR's website or the New North website or the Pioneer Park Historical Complex Facebook page or my own Facebook page, Kerry Bloedorn, Northwoods Historian, and you can see some of those specific stories that interest me.
I would say the two that have really interested me is obviously the origins of the Hodag, who Eugene Shepard, and then also the train that went over that bridge.
Train that went into the water.
Yeah.
Maybe the Harshaw Trestle.
Yes, that one.
Yeah, Harshaw Trestle. You say that 5 times.
Harshaw
fast.
Trestle. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one. There are so many stories like that here in the Northwoods. Of course, the Hodag legends and lore are something that I am always learning more about and always sharing information with other people about. It's just so prevalent and a prominent part of specifically Rhinelander history. You really can't escape it. And why would you? Because it's absolutely marvelous, rich history. And we can thank lumberjacks of old, we can thank Eugene Shepard, and we can thank the stories that have been called by the Native American people in the Northwoods of Wisconsin too.
Now, you are the coordinator of the Pioneer Park Historical Complex. How long have you been doing that?
I believe this was my 5th or 6th season. Starting to lose count.
How long has that museum been there?
It features the oldest logging museum in the nation. It's 90 years old this year.
Wow.
Yeah. So you could say the museum's been around for 90 years. The different aspects of it, the various 7 buildings that are there at the complex, have kind of come over the decades to turn it into the wonderful museum that it is today.
And obviously you are the Vice President of the Oneida County Fair. Happy to have you on that board. I'm the Executive Director, and I'm glad that you took on the mantle of Vice President. We got a really good group of people running the fair right now. What would you say is your favorite part of the fair?
Well, I being at Pioneer Park, I had kind of watched the fair, which takes place at Pioneer Park, for a couple of years, and of course I had come to help out with setup and tear down for a couple of years before I really wanted to get more involved. And it's just one of those things. It's such a wonderful family event that takes place, and the Oneida County Fair is this really cute, quaint, old-fashioned style fair, and what's not to love about it? And I just wanted to, I had some spare time on my hands. This is before I had a toddler, and I just wanted to get more involved in it and to play a role in bringing that to the community and to the county and to the area, and it's been a wonderful opportunity.
Now, you're also involved in a little event we have up here called Project North.
Yeah, that's one event I wish I had more time to offer just as a volunteer and to get involved. This year, I was able to perform at Project North with my acoustic rock trio, Vinnie Bexday. And we've been a band for like 15 or 20 years or something like that. And it was a lot of fun to go to that event this year and perform.
Yeah, among everything else, you're also a musician and you got your band now. But you haven't been doing the music thing for a while now. You were doing it, then there was a hiatus period, now you're picking it up again. What led to the hiatus and why are you bringing it back now?
Well, 10 or 15 years ago, this group was gigging like 5-6 nights a week. We played every bar, every venue, every music festival that you possibly could in the Midwest. And then, as often happens, people take different interests, and you want to explore those interests, and you find out that people are not just singularly faceted. You know, like a diamond, there are lots of sides to your own personality and your own hobbies and things you like to do. So I think between the three of us that are in the group, we went explored other opportunities, and it just didn't leave a lot of time for performing music. Certainly, it had always been kind of on the back burner, simmering. We regularly got together throughout the years to play a gig here and there. And this last year, it just kind of happened that we all had more opportunity to pursue the music venture again. And it's really wonderful because once you have an opportunity to perform and to play music for people, it's one of those things that you just fall in love with. And so to get to do it again is a real treat, a real honor.
Now, one of the things that I really love, and I get to participate now and then in these, are these wonderful Hodag videos that you and Ben from the Hodag store put on. And I'm excited to say that Ben's probably going to be my next guest, so that'll be fun. But you guys also do a podcast.
Yeah,
together.
I think we've done 4 or 5 podcasts. Ben Burnell owns the Hodag store here in town, and we both just have this love for Hodags and their history. Hodag aficionados, you could say. And so we decided to just turn our normal Hodag conversations. Him and I are like talking about Hodags all the time, and we're like, maybe other people would enjoy, listening to us talk about Hodags too, and maybe they can learn some things about Hodags that they didn't know, things about the legends, the lore, the culture of Hodags that has developed here in Rhinelander over the last 130 years. And it's been a lot of fun to just sit down once a month and talk about Hodaggy things and the Hodaggery we have going on. And Hodags being such a big part of the Rhinelander historical fabric, it's important to kind of booster the Hodag and take it to places where maybe people haven't heard about Hodags. If you grow up and you live in Rhinelander, there's a tendency for people to maybe be a little bit like the Hodag it's kind of been there, done that. It's something maybe you don't think too much about. But then when you travel to other parts of the country and you talk to people about Hodags and what is a Hodag, what the heck is a Hodag, people always say. And then you get to explain to them, about Rhinelander and Hodags, and it's this, mythological beast that inhabits the Northwoods of Wisconsin, and talking all about it. People absolutely love it. It's extremely unique to Rhinelander. The culture, the heritage, the history is very deep, and few places on planet Earth have something like that. So again, thanks to Gene Shepard for bringing that beast to Rhinelander. And as you're well aware, anybody can kind of grasp onto this creature and run with it, which is part of the beauty of it.
Yeah, I always love the fact that his family made sure that the Hodag can be used for marketing up here, and just anybody who wants to use the Hodag to create something fun for the community are allowed to do that, because they are very easygoing about letting the image of the Hodag be used by many different people for many different things. So bringing it back to Project North, we had a video, 10-second movie video challenge, and basically what it was there was a theme, and you had 10 seconds to make a movie, and there was a contest, and I wanted to share with the audience our little video real quick here so that everyone can see what I'm talking about. Probably doesn't make sense out of context, but you know, let's have fun with it. So that was a 10-second movie that me and my son had put together, and we had a lot of fun doing it. And I watched all the other videos because they just posted them not too long ago, and man, they were all good. I just had a blast.
Yeah, I had a chance to stop up there. They played them throughout the festival at the radio station, and I popped up there to watch a bunch of them, and everyone was good. It was great. You know, you think about how much can you do in 10 seconds, and oftentimes I'd watch one, and at the end of it, I'd be like,
like
that
ours.
was really something, you know, for like 10 seconds. It seems to go by even faster than 10 seconds.
Yeah, it really does.
A lot of them were very funny. A lot of them made you stop and think about something. It was really wonderful. So I'm trying to think of who put that together.
Nate Shepard. Yeah, Nate Shepard.
He's awesome, and that was a great idea. So thanks to Nate for...
Yeah. So speaking of the great storytelling and historian that you are, I wanted to ask you if you would give us a quick little how the Hodag came to be, that kind of a story that you tell at the Pioneer Park Historical Complex when people come through.
Yeah, okay. I'd love
Awesome.
to.
So I'm going to scooch out of here. You scooch right in the middle here, and the stage is all yours.
Okay. So I didn't plan to do this tonight, but one thing that I love to do is tell Hodag stories and legends. And I tell this story a lot during the summertime to visitors that come to the museum. It's technically the official Hodag Museum of Rhinelander. There are lots of authentic Hodags there on display. So it's really wonderful to get people to come and visit. This year, I think I counted, we had people from 37 states and 16 different countries that came to Rhinelander, came to the museum, learned about Hodags and Northwoods, Wisconsin history. So it's really cool to think about. But without further ado, I like to turn people's attention to the beautiful, picturesque pine trees of Pioneer Park, Rhinelander, Wisconsin. And the pine trees at Pioneer Park are the last genetic vestiges of an ancient old-growth forest that covered the entirety of the Northwoods of Wisconsin 150 years ago. And at the confluence of the Pelican and Wisconsin rivers, Pelican River, which runs alongside Pioneer Park, and the Wisconsin River, which is just a few blocks away, there was a grove of white pine trees 14 miles by 40 miles wide. And some of the trees that were living in this grove were up to 6 feet wide and 100 feet tall. And it was the perfect place for strange animals to be roaming about since the end of the last ice age here in the Northwoods of Wisconsin 12,000 years ago. Now, I always start out by saying that there are dozens, maybe over 100 legends and tales and stories about the Hodag and about Hodags. And if I tell everyone in every detail that I know, it takes me about 4 or 5 days non-stop talking to get through it all. And as anybody that knows me knows that I like to talk, and I'm a pretty good talker, and I'm happy to oblige visitors that come to the museum that want to hang out for a few days and miss a few meals. Most of the time everybody wants the abbreviated version, which I have, which I think hits all the high points, and that only takes about 3 or 4 hours. So I'll continue on. Now, 150 years ago, 200 years ago, there is a Native American tribe that lives in the Northwoods of Wisconsin, the Anishinaabe. We know them as the Ojibwe people. And they tell legends in their medicine lodges and around the campfire of a water panther spirit that they call Mishapishu. And if you look up Mishapishu on Uncle Google, you'll find depictions of Mishapishu look very close to our beloved Hodag, or rather, Hodags look very close to Mishapishu. And there's a reason for that. 129 years ago this year, there was a gentleman named Eugene Simeon Shepard that lived in the Rhinelander area. And Gene Shepard was a lumberjack, a timber cruiser, a land surveyor, a resort owner, a map maker, a horse racer, a carpenter, a Gene of all trades, I like to say. And he spent a lot of time with Anishinaabe guides, spoke the Ojibwe language fluently, learned about the lays of the land from those peoples, and had no doubt heard stories about Mishapishu, the water panther. He also spent a lot of time in logging camps where they would tell amazing stories about Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox and other tall tales. And one of the stories lumberjacks like to tell is when a lumber oxen would pass away, they would build a funeral pyre and put the oxen on top of the funeral pyre, and if they burned this oxen for 7 continuous years, the spirit of that animal would escape into the forest and be reincarnated into this strange prehistoric lizard-like horned creature. So Gene was on the constant lookout for strange animals roaming about the forest when he was out doing his timber cruising or surveying or map making work. And legend has it that one day Gene was walking on a trail just north of Rhinelander in section 37 on the plat map in what is now the township of Pine Lake, coincidentally where they host the country's longest running country music festival, Hodag Country Music Festival. All of a sudden Gene stopped dead in his tracks, having smelled a horrendous, skunky, musty odor in the air. Like rotten buzzard meat and skunk perfume is how Gene described it. All of a sudden, Gene noticed some tufts of dark green and black fur alongside the trail, which was very peculiar since Gene had never seen any green, fur-bearing animals in the north woods of Wisconsin. A little farther down the trail, he discovered a large white pine tree. About 7 feet up on the tree were sharp claw marks. That's when Gene noticed a pair of glowing green eyes crossing the trail in front of him. Now, Gene was a tough lumberjack type. He continued along the trail undeterred until he discovered a hole dug into the side of a hill. He walked up to the hole very quietly, very carefully. He bent over, he peeked inside, expecting to maybe find a black bear taking a nap. As anybody knows, we have thousands of black bears up here in the north woods of Wisconsin, and for their part, they're relatively harmless, unless they stop by your house and destroy your garbage cans like one did at my house a couple of nights ago. I'm not salty about that whatsoever. But I digress. Back to the whole north of town. Sure enough, Gene Shepard discovers the furry backside of an animal, but he had never seen a black bear with a long tail with white spikes along its back. So he put some rocks in front of the hole and he quickly made his way back to Rhinelander, and he went downtown to an area that we call the Hollow. In the early days, it was called the Hungry Hollow. That's where all the lumberjacks would come into town from the logging camps and spend a few days hanging out, drinking a few beers, getting a bite to eat. And it didn't take long for Gene Shepard to drum up a large posse of rough and tumble lumberjacks, and they went back out to the whole north of town, and they took with them a long pike pole, which is a tool that boomage workers use to move logs around the water before they're sent up into the sawmill, like we had here in Rhinelander many years ago, and which is how Boom Lake got its name. So they put a piece of cloth at the end of this pike pole with some chloroform on it, or sleeping medication is what I tell the kids, and they slowly stuck it into the back of the hole where this creature was taking a nap. It seemingly fell into an even deeper slumber. Gene got down on his hands and knees. He crawled into the hole very carefully, very quietly. He grabbed this beast by the tail, whatever it was, and he slowly pulled it out. As soon as the lantern light hit this creature's face, its eyes popped open. It sprung upon the lumberjacks. Now, one of the lumberjacks had brought along his white bulldog for protection. And I'm always sad to report that this vicious animal turned upon that poor little white bulldog and gobbled it up in one single bite. And that is how legend has it in this area. This creature acquired the taste for white bulldogs ever after. Now, after a wrestling match in the forest, they were able to subdue this animal. They chained it to a wagon they had brought along. They got a better look at it. Much like the creatures that you'll see displayed at Pioneer Park Historical Complex, it was approximately 7 feet long. It was covered in dark green and black shaggy fur. It was prehistoric and lizard-like in nature. It had 12 white spikes along its back, 13 including one long one at the end of its tail. It had oxen-like horns, tusks for teeth, and razor-sharp claws. And Gene Shepard figured he had finally captured a Mishipishu, a water panther spirit of Ojibwe legend. He had captured a lumberjack tale of the creature that would reincarnate from the dead oxen. Now, the lumberjacks along in this adventure had a difficult time pronouncing the word Mishipishu, let alone reading and writing. So they decided to call this animal a hodag. They brought the hodag back to Rhinelander to Gene's property, which is on Prospect Street here in Rhinelander. There's a wonderful little park there called Shepherd Park, no doubt. And there's a beautiful stand of pine trees just like at Pioneer Park. And at that location is an old estate that we locals call the Hodag House. It is, as you can imagine, painted green. Behind the Hodag House, Gene's son Leighton dug a big pit in the backyard. They chained the hodag to the bottom of the pit. They built a big stone barn over the top of this pit. All of this you can go by and see to this very day. Well, word traveled far and wide very quickly by newspaper headline in those days, and the next thing you know, thousands of people were flocking to Rhinelander to catch a glimpse of this shaggy-furred prehistoric animal they had captured in the old-growth forest of northern Wisconsin that everybody was calling the hodag. Word traveled so far that a gentleman out in New York State by the name of Phineas T. Barnum heard about the hodag, who at that time owned a famous circus, and this was right up his alley. He decided to come up to Rhinelander to offer Gene Shepard a large sum of money to take the hodag back to New York to display in a sideshow. At the same time, the Smithsonian Institute, prestigious museum in Washington, D.C., dispatched a scientific team to come to Rhinelander to take a survey of the newly discovered animal. Well, one morning, as fate would have it, Gene went out to feed the hodags some breakfast. The chain at the bottom of the pit was snapped. Claw marks up the side of the pit, the back door to the barn completely destroyed, trail leading down to the Pelican River where it had presumably swam across and made its way back out into the old-growth forest from whence it came. And I only say that because I really like to say, from whence it came. Now, this put Gene between a rock and a hard place, or as I like to say, between a petrified hodag egg and a hard place. So Gene got together with another friend of his, another lumberjack by the name of Luke Lakeshore Kearney, who would go on to write a fabulous book about the hodag, which we happen to have a very rare copy of at the Logging Museum at Pioneer Park. And it is setting right alongside a more modern publication by Miss J.K. Rowling, who wrote the Harry Potter books, who saw fit to include the hodag in her latest book, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, bringing hodags to a younger and worldwide audience. So thank you, Miss Rowling, for that. So Gene and Luke got a big pine log together and they carved the best likeness of the beast they had captured, which had escaped into the forest once again. They chained the wooden hodag to the bottom of the pit. All the old-time Jack said it looked very realistic, very convincing. Well, Mr. Barnum did, in fact, come to town by train a few days later. He went out to the Pines estate. He took one look at this carved wooden hodag and determined quickly that it was just a fake wooden animal. So disappointedly, he went back to New York, telling everybody along the way that hodags were just a bunch of malarkey, as the Irish lumberjacks might say. Just a lumberjack tall tale that Gene Shepard had thought up to get people to come to Rhinelander. And that very well may be, seeing as how I'm sitting here 129 years later, telling you this very story, and do so about 50,000 times a summer to people that come from all over the country and all over the world to see Rhinelander's hodags. And people can believe that if they'd like to, that hodags are fake. But if you're like me, and you like to go walking on the trails among the last of the big pine trees that still grow in the Rhinelander area, from time to time I'm apt to smell strange odors in the air. Find tufts of dark green and black fur alongside the trail, claw marks on big pine trees, holes dug into the sides of hills. And I believe that wild hodags still roam these parts to this very day. And true to the legend, you will never see any white bulldogs in Rhinelander. And that is the legend of the hodag. That's the story. I'm sticking to it. If you're listening to this, spread the word far and wide. Hodags are real.
Well, I gotta say, I have heard Kerry's rendition, the long version, the medium version, and the short version now many times, and I still love listening to that story because you tell it with such vigor and you tell it with such passion that you can't help but love the story. So thank you so much for doing that. And also thank you for coming on and being my inaugural guest to really kick off this little show that I'm trying to put together to highlight all the great things and people that we have in the North Woods. And as my thank you, you are going to be the recipient of the very first pocket dag that I've created.
That's awesome.
It's a little hodag token for good luck, and that's my little thank you for coming on the show. So tune in next time. We'll have a brand new guest on, and we'll talk more about what makes the North Woods and especially Rhinelander great. And we'll see you again. Thanks for watching the first show.